So, here's what happened. I found out earlier that day that my wife, Elise, had actually made dinner reservations for Valentine's, which caught me off guard because I'm usually the one who plans stuff like that every year. Still, I thought, hey, maybe she wanted to surprise me this time. But by the time the evening rolled around, all I got was a quick message saying she had to stay late at work. Not long after, I was scrolling through my phone when I noticed a comment pop up on a WhatsApp status. It was from her coworker, Adrian. It said something like, "Only a caring soul knows how to truly treat someone special. Gorgeous woman, classy dinner spot. The dessert tonight was sweet, but not as sweet as your kiss." Yeah. That kind of message. The photo attached hit even harder. Elise was in it, dressed in the necklace I'd given her just that morning. Sitting at a place I recognized immediately. It was that little bistro by the river in Clearwater, the same place I'd proposed to her, the same table where we used to spend anniversaries. And the bottle of wine sitting there? That was from the gift box I left on the kitchen counter before I went to work. Normally, I would have called her out right then. But that night? I don't know. I felt worn out. Not just tired, drained. When she walked through the door, I was eating a bowl of mango slices. She's deathly allergic to mango, but I didn't even think about it. Or maybe I did. I just didn't care anymore. We hadn't had mango in the house in years. Not even in juice form. Jules was severely allergic, so I never brought it near her. That night, though, I sat on the couch with a plate of freshly sliced mango, not even trying to hide it. Maybe a part of me wanted her to notice. Maybe I just didn't care anymore. She walked in like it was any other late night, handed me a small gift box, and looked a little caught off guard to see me still up. Inside was a Patek Philippe watch, the real deal. "Happy Valentine's, babe," she said, casually. "Just a reminder I'm a giving wife, not just a taking one." I didn't say much. I just nodded, thanked her. But earlier that day, I'd gotten a message from Damien, the guy who owned that little place on Pinewood Street, where we used to go back in college. Same place I proposed, actually. He messaged to say congrats and joked about being the third wheel again. Said he had a new dessert he wanted me to try next time I came by, even promised it didn't have any mango, remembering Jules' allergy. I just replied, "Sure, sounds good." Not long after that, Jules called. Said she had to stay at the office, something came up, she couldn't make dinner tonight. Claimed it was last minute. Said she was sorry. I couldn't sleep. Something didn't sit right. So I grabbed my phone and started scrolling. That's when I saw it, a post from Adrian. Him and Jules at the exact same restaurant, sitting at our old table. Same bottle of wine I'd gifted her that morning. Same necklace. And she was smiling. The worst part? The cake they were holding, it had mango puree dripping from the middle like it was filled with every tear I never let fall. She couldn't even eat it without reacting, and yet there it was. I didn't have it in me to start another argument. I was past that. Just too damn tired to even look her in the eye. Instead of bringing up Adrian's post, I found myself craving mango. It was weird, after all these years of avoiding it because of Elisa's allergy, it felt almost rebellious just to enjoy something so simple. I hadn't ordered anything with mango in forever, but that night, I did. And honestly? I liked it. After finishing, I got up and said, "Well, if there's nothing else, I'm heading to bed." That's when Elisa's voice cut through the quiet. "Jonah," she said suddenly, grabbing my arm like she'd just realized something urgent. Her eyes searched mine, confusion flickering across her face. I looked at her and asked, "What?" She stepped a little closer, lowering her voice. "You're seriously going to bed this early on Valentine's night?" she murmured in that teasing, sultry tone she used to pull out when she wanted to shift the mood. Elise had always carried this calm, mysterious energy, especially after college. The glasses she started wearing only added to her bookish, detached allure. But tonight, there was something else. There was a faint scent of smoke on her, not cigarette smoke, something spicier, muskier, like the kind that clings to your clothes after a fancy lounge. I stepped back before she could lean in closer. "I just ate mango," I told her flatly. "You'll break out if you get too close." Then I walked into the bedroom and locked the door behind me. I tossed my phone on the nightstand, then picked it back up to call my boss. She'd been waiting on an answer from me about a job transfer I'd been stalling on. "You serious this time?" she asked. "If you bail on me again because of Elise, I swear I'll strangle you." I told her she didn't have to worry. "I'm not backing out this time." I chuckled at her warning. "I'll come crawling back to you with my head in hand if I bail again." The thing is, the job in the ad department would have meant a bigger paycheck. But it also came with a lot of travel, something I'd turned down 3 years ago. I knew Elise wouldn't be able to handle that kind of unpredictability, especially with how much she valued routine. She was always the type to stick to tradition, even in the most unpredictable of times. It had taken me forever to even hold her hand for the first time. Back in school, Elise was distant, almost cold to my friends, especially during middle and high school. My buddies couldn't wrap their heads around why I cared for her so much. I'd just smile and tell them, she literally saved my life. And it wasn't just something I said casually. It was true. There was this one day back in middle school, our school was hit by an earthquake. It all went down so fast. People were panicking, rushing out of the building like it was about to collapse at any second. I was ahead of the crowd, trying to stay calm, but then I tripped on the leg of a desk and went down hard. In the chaos, I couldn't find my footing. But Elise? She pushed through the crowd, cutting her way toward me like nothing else mattered. She reached me, helped me up, and kept us moving when it felt like everything was falling apart. We made it out of there together, with her staying close, guiding us through the mess. Later, I asked her, "What were you thinking? You could have died doing that. Was it worth it? Wouldn't all your efforts have been for nothing if you'd?" Elise looked at me, almost taken aback by the question. "I wasn't really thinking about it," she said quietly, her expression soft. "I just knew I'd rather die with you than alone if it came to that." That was Elise for you, always putting others first, even when the world was falling apart around us. But now, I wonder, did she ever stop to think about leaving me? Was there ever a moment when she considered someone else? She'd always seemed so genuine to me. Her sincerity never faltered, at least, not in my eyes. But maybe, over time, sincerity wears thin. I can't help but question everything now. The smallest cracks I never noticed before are more glaring now. I was still on the phone with my boss, and she must have heard the shift in my tone. She knew something was off. "Everyone makes mistakes," she said, her voice softer. "Blaming the past is easy. It's harder to fix it." She paused, then added, "I hope Nathan always has the courage to make things right when they go wrong." Of course, she followed up with her usual sarcastic edge. "Well, someone like you," she said, "someone perfect like you, never makes mistakes. You know, it's understandable, though." She gave a short, dry laugh before turning serious. "But don't screw this up. You've got a business trip to Argentina in 3 days, right? This isn't something you can just brush off. And don't go risking the woman for this job." I woke up early the next morning, determined to get into the office and finish everything I had to wrap up. After their night out, I found Elise sitting in the living room, her lips swollen, probably from the mango allergy. And there was Matthew, standing by the door, looking a little too comfortable with her. My stomach twisted as I made my way past her to leave. Then she grabbed my wrist, her fingers tight, almost like she was trying to stop me. "Why are you mad?" she asked, her expression a little defensive, but still, she had that edge of concern in her voice. "Is it because I didn't spend time with you yesterday? Like I said, I had to put in extra hours. You know how hard it is for me, being a woman trying to advance in a company that's going public. I've got eyes on me from every direction. I have to set an example, Jonah." I could feel the weight of her words, but I didn't answer right away. She was always so caught up in her career, but somehow, she never seemed to understand how that left me feeling. "Why are you acting like this now?" she added. "You always promised me you'd support my career." I stayed silent, letting her words hang in the air. I'd put up with her cold, distant attitude for years, tolerated her lack of interest, even when I was in the hospital, but she was too busy to notice. And then there was that one day. The day I picked her up from work, and her phone rang. She picked it up almost immediately, talking with Matthew like it was nothing. She was polite, professional, but the way she answered made my skin crawl. It was the first time I'd ever heard her say his name. That's when I realized, it wasn't that Elise was too busy to answer the phone. She just didn't think I deserved to see that part of her. That part where she was herself with someone else. I pulled away from her then, my heart heavy with the realization. "We're done, Elise," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Before I could even finish those words, her phone rang again. She glanced at the screen and gave me that pitying look, the one that always made me feel like I was the problem. "Matthew," she said softly, almost apologetically, before answering. "Come get me, sis. I don't want to get out of bed, it's so cold today." There was a pause before she spoke again, her voice almost playful. "You're scared of the cold?" Her expression softened as she spoke, almost instinctively, like it was second nature to soften for him. "Okay, wake up, Matthew. I take it you're bringing me breakfast today?" I couldn't help it. A bitter laugh slipped out, more out of resentment than anything else. Something wasn't right, I could feel it in my bones. And then, as if to add insult to injury, Elise casually added, "By the way, thank you for Nathan yesterday. Not only did we dine at his restaurant, but I also borrowed one of his people. I'll be sure to get him something nice next time." Charlotte gave me a brief, remorseful look, but it didn't last. As soon as she heard Matthew's voice, her expression changed, and she quickly turned down the volume on her phone. I couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. It felt so ridiculous that I couldn't stop myself. I turned to leave, shaking my head, but Charlotte rushed after me, quickly cutting off Matthew's call. "I gave Matthew our reservation," she said, her words coming out in a rush. "He had a client meal and forgot to book anything. You know, it's all for business, right?" The excuse sounded so hollow, I almost couldn't believe she was trying to justify it. But she wasn't finished yet. She quickly added, "He has no food at home. I'm going to make him something." I couldn't help but feel a sharp sting in my chest. "Why don't you make me some porridge later?" I asked, my voice low. I'd been feeling unwell all day, but I wasn't sure if I really wanted to press the issue. "I'll make it for him," she said, so casually, without even a hint of hesitation. I froze for a moment, but she was already moving on, as if she hadn't even heard me. She hurried off, completely unaware that I was lying on the couch, feeling sick. It was so different from how things used to be, back in high school. Back then, Charlotte would have chewed me out if I even hinted at skipping a meal, or if I showed the slightest sign of stress. But now, it was like I was invisible. Back then, she would always bring me a bowl of warm rice cakes when I was feeling down, no questions asked. It felt like those moments were from a lifetime ago. "Speed up," I muttered to myself as I tried to push through the fog in my mind. I knew I had to take care of everything. If I didn't, things would only get worse. When I finally got to work, my boss had thrown a mountain of paperwork onto my desk. "You have 3 days to deal with all of this," he told me. "Or you can come to me with your head." I barely had time to breathe. I worked through the night, trying to make sense of it all. That's when I came across a draft of the divorce documents from the lawyer. I didn't know what to do with myself after that. I grabbed a cab and headed straight to Charlotte's office building. The snowstorm outside was getting worse by the minute. By the time I reached her floor, the power had gone out. I scowled, pulling out the flashlight on my phone to light my way. Just then, I got a message from a coworker, a link with a question. "You've always wanted to go to a heavy metal concert, right?" he asked tentatively. Confused, I clicked the link. It led me to a post on Matthew's social media account. As I looked at it, everything became painfully clear. The post was a detailed timeline of every moment Matthew had spent with Charlotte. He'd followed her to college, worked at her company, and known her since high school. According to his biography, it wasn't just my privilege to be smitten with her. I understood now why my colleague had been hesitant to send me the link. I clicked the link, and almost immediately, the concert footage hit me like a punch to the gut. The lights flashed across Matthew and Charlotte's faces in the crowd, their hands entwined, their lips locked in a passionate kiss. My phone slipped from my hand, crashing to the floor. I didn't even care. The rage was too intense. Charlotte and I had spent the majority of our lives together. Nearly all of it. Yet, in that moment, I felt like I didn't know her at all. The sound of gentle sobs filtered through the thin walls of her office. I froze. "I'm sorry, but we really can't," I heard her say, her voice cracking. "I just like you," a male voice responded, and the sound of his arms circling her waist filled the silence. He gently cupped her tear-streaked face, his eyes full of sorrow. "Matthew." I stood there, helpless, as they kissed. He moved his hand from her waist to the back of her head, and they kissed again, deep, lingering, and full of intimacy. And then, the power came back on with a sudden, loud boom. The room flooded with light, and that's when they saw me standing there in the doorway. "Nathan, it's not what it looks like," Matthew said, his voice rushed, almost panicked. It wasn't Charlotte's fault. The truth was, I just loved her too damn much. But when she finally spotted me, her face showed pure shock. Her lips were still slightly parted, a trace of wetness left behind. "Nathan, why are you here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I gave her a calm glance before turning my attention to Matthew. I smiled, almost politely, before I approached him. But then, before he could even register what was happening, I slapped him hard across the face. I grabbed him by the collar, pulling him close so I could look him dead in the eye. I didn't even let him fall. "Your pathetic face is the target of this strike," I said, my voice a low growl. "I've dealt with a lot of pretentious women in my time, but never have I met a man who made me feel so disgusted." He tried to argue, but I wasn't having it. Before he could get a word out, I landed a solid right punch into his stomach. He crumpled to the floor, gasping for air, doubled over in pain. Charlotte was about to say something, but I wasn't listening. Without thinking, I struck her across the cheek, my hand landing with a sharp sound that broke the tension. Her gaze snapped back to reality, and I saw her eyes fill with tears as she gripped her swollen cheek. She looked hurt. And in that moment, I just couldn't hold it in anymore. I ripped off my wedding band and threw it at her, like it was nothing more than a piece of garbage. It hit her, and that's when she lost it. Tears started pouring down her face, mixing with the swelling on her cheeks as she collapsed into a mess of sobs. "Don't do this, Nathan. Just listen to me, please." Charlotte's voice was shaky, desperate as I handed her the printed divorce papers. But I interrupted her before she could say another word. "We're having a divorce, Charlotte," I stated flatly, feeling the weight of the words sink in. Charlotte immediately rushed after me as I made my way to the elevator, disregarding any sense of decency or shame. She chased me down the stairs, her voice echoing through the quiet building. "Listen to me, Nathan, please. It isn't what you believe." I could feel the eyes of half the building on us as they watched in silence. I was done. I had made up my mind. I called a cab, the cold air stinging as I stepped outside. But before I could close the car door, Charlotte shoved her body against it, blocking me from leaving. "There's really nothing between us," she said, her voice cracking, her face pleading with me. "He's just a child. He doesn't know any better." I scoffed. "He's not even an adult. You're just teaching him how to kiss beforehand." My tone was sharp, cutting through her words. She stared at me, her eyes filled with regret, but there was something else too. Almost as if she were watching a ship set sail, knowing it would never return. "Don't look at me like that, Nathan," she choked out, her voice trembling. "Don't stare at me that way, please. We've spent more than a decade together. Without you, I couldn't survive. Matthew was just a coincidence." Her words lingered in the air, but I knew deep down, there was nothing left between us. Her voice grew progressively softer, but the sudden call from behind her snapped her attention away. "Charlotte, Matthew has climbed to the roof. Hurry up." Instinctively, she released her grip on the car door and spun around without hesitation. I watched her go with a mocking smile, the sound of the door slamming echoing in the night. As I pulled away, I saw her follow me for a few steps in the rearview mirror. But then, she turned back and dashed into the building. Suddenly, she stopped, as if caught in some invisible force. I shut my eyes, feeling the weight of the piercing agony in my chest that had only now hit me, after the rage had passed. The driver glanced at me in the mirror, concern clouding his features. "Hello, youngster. Are you okay?" I turned my head away, wiping my face quickly, and muttered nothing in response. I couldn't bring myself to speak. When I got home, I started packing my things, moving with a mechanical precision. It was then that my phone buzzed with calls. First, it was from my father. Then, from Charlotte's parents. I couldn't help but scoff. Charlotte was really busy, I thought sourly. Still had time to alert both sets of parents to act as peacemakers, even as she needed to stop Matthew from jumping off a building. I'd known Charlotte for more than a decade. Longer than most couples. Longer than anyone should have to feel this hollow. Our connection had always been complex, a knot that seemed impossible to untangle, and yet, here we were, on the verge of breaking it. Ultimately, my parents' words echoed in my mind, "Son, all we want is for you to make choices that will make you happy." But I couldn't find happiness in what had become of us, of her. I was suffocating in this twisted version of love we had built. As I finished packing and opened the door, Charlotte stood there, her face a picture of devastation. Her eyes, red and swollen, seemed to search mine for something, anything that might keep me from leaving. She trembled as she reached for my hand, looking like a child caught in the act of something she knew was wrong. "Nathan, don't leave. Please, allow me to explain." Her voice cracked as she spoke, and before I could respond, her tears spilled over. "I beseech you, strike me," she whispered, her words catching in the air. I was scolded. "Do as you please, but please don't stare at me that way." She pressed down on my suitcase, her hands trembling as she fought to keep me in place. I stood there, silent, watching her. It felt like a dream, like everything was happening to someone else, not to me. She was so desperate, clinging to the last thread of a relationship that had long since frayed. "Nathan, we agreed to spend our golden years together in Beijing. Our parents are anticipating our return for the new year. I can't let you go just yet. You are sorely missed by your parents." Her voice faltered, but the weight of her words pressed down on me. I could see it in her eyes, this wasn't about us anymore. It was about expectations, obligations, the future that wasn't really ours to begin with. I let out a loud sigh, the breath catching in my chest as the pressure of it all crushed me. "Charlotte," I said, the words coming out flat. "What do you want?" Without warning, she threw herself at me, hugging my leg as if it was the only thing tethering her to reality. She almost fell to her knees in her desperation, and for a moment, I almost felt pity. But it was fleeting. I didn't know what to do with her, with this broken woman who had once been my whole world. Her tears seeped through my clothing, warm and frantic as she cried, her hands pressing against me, pleading. "Give me another chance, please. I'll do better." I swear, the desperation in her voice should have been enough to break me. I should have felt something, anything, other than numbness. But instead, I stood there, unmoving. I didn't respond immediately. My gaze drifted, and something caught my eye. It was the old college graduation picture, one that had slipped out when I was hastily packing my things. The frame had long since lost its luster, but the memories tied to it were still vivid. As I looked closer, something shifted inside me. It wasn't just Charlotte and me in the photo. No, there was someone else, Matthew. He stood under a tree in the background, almost hidden, but not entirely. He was watching Charlotte. And Charlotte? She wasn't looking at me either. She was looking somewhere else, lost in the moment, but not at me. I froze, my chest tightening as realization crashed over me. It wasn't just today. It had begun that early, hadn't it? All those years I thought it was just the two of us, that we shared those moments in silence and understanding. But all along, there had been someone else in the background, waiting, watching, like a criminal hiding in plain sight, preparing for the inevitable. Charlotte shuddered as she noticed the change in me, her eyes avoiding mine. She could feel it, the shift in the air, the quiet anger that simmered beneath the surface. She hadn't expected me to stay silent for so long. When I finally spoke, my voice was barely above a whisper. Really, Charlotte? This is how it's been. She looked up, her eyes wide, filled with a mix of hope and disbelief. Nathan, would you be open to re-establishing our relationship? The words hung in the air between us, the weight of them suffocating any remnants of the love I had once felt for her. I paused, my mind racing with everything that had unfolded, everything that I was still trying to wrap my head around. Then, I nodded slowly, the words coming out with a surprising steadiness in my voice, sure, but with one caveat. I saw her waiting, desperate for me to continue, and I could almost hear the relief in her breath as she hung on every word. Do you recall, back in high school, how we organized a trip to the islands? I let the silence sit between us, and when she nodded, a small, hopeful smile tugged at the corner of her lips, I added, we never went. In all these years, I would like us to go to the islands for a 5-day holiday. Her face lit up instantly, and before I could even process my own words, she threw herself into my arms, her body trembling with emotion. Isn't it that easy, she whispered, a little too softly for my liking, as if she were trying to convince herself of the simplicity in this request. I didn't respond, but inside, a part of me knew that deep down, this promise would never be kept. As I stood there, holding her, the reality settled in. In retrospect, I saw it clearly now, Charlotte's attraction to Matthew wasn't as surprising as I'd first thought. Her life had always been so meticulously planned, so governed by rules set out by her family, that it was no wonder she sought something different. She had always followed the path laid out for her, step by step. From her schooling to her marriage, from Beijing to the capital, and even the fact that I was her childhood sweetheart, everything had been predictable, controlled. It was like a well-organized script with no room for deviation. But the thing about safety, about predictability, is that it's stifling. It's normal, I suppose, to yearn for something more when life becomes too comfortable, too mapped out. Charlotte had lived in a world where everything had a purpose, a reason, and a plan. She had never strayed from that plan, until now. For too long, she'd been craving that surge of excitement, something that made her feel alive in a way that the perfect, safe life I had offered her could never quite provide. And Matthew was it, the embodiment of everything I wasn't. He was daring, spontaneous, and defiant. He would kiss her at sunrise by the sea, keeping her awake all night at concerts, taking her on late-night walks up snow-capped mountains. It was difficult, I imagined, for Charlotte to resist getting swept away by such passion, such reckless excitement. I had been reserved, steady, reliable, and in doing so, I had made life predictable, but not thrilling. No matter how composed a person is, no one can stay indifferent in the face of a love that's so unrestrained, so untamed. I couldn't blame her, not really. Matthew had given her the thrill she had been craving, the excitement she hadn't realized was missing until it was right in front of her. It was intoxicating, and I watched from a distance as she got lost in it. After our trip, Charlotte promised that she would be by my side every day, ensuring I never got bored of her. But there was an underlying fear in her eyes, a fear that I might change my mind, that I might reconsider. She seemed almost eager to finally go on the journey we had planned so long ago, as though this trip to the islands would somehow fix everything. I didn't share the same enthusiasm. She took charge of planning every detail of the vacation, perhaps hoping that the physical distance would somehow make the emotional distance between us feel smaller. Meanwhile, I sat back, bored, aimlessly scrolling through social media. Matthew was busy showing off his affections for Charlotte, almost to the point of self-torment. He posted constantly, flooding the world with evidence of their relationship. His posts were blunt and unrestrained, like a public declaration of his love for her that he couldn't contain. Today, he posted something that seemed to sting with desperation: "I'm the one she loves." His words rang in my mind, but I responded in kind, matching his display of ownership with a statement of my own, I'll be living with my wife on the islands from now on. The past has vanished like smoke. We are starting over today. All I want to do now is hold her hand, It was an impulsive thing to write, driven by something I couldn't quite explain, but as soon as I pressed send, I knew there was no turning back. I was starting over, too. Whether Charlotte was ready for it or not, I was determined to make this new chapter happen, because sometimes, even after everything, all you can do is push forward and try to reclaim what's yours. Matthew asked to meet, his voice low and tense, his teeth clenched in anger. After everything, you're still going to forgive her, he demanded when we sat down at a cafe. You intend to stay with her? I didn't answer right away. I just grinned, a tight, almost humorless smile. The words were there, but I didn't need to say them. I knew how this would go. I remained silent as the tension between us grew heavier. You're really leaving, he spat out, disbelief evident in his voice. Are you really going to the islands? How come she hasn't spoken to me? Frustration seeped into his words. My supervisor expedited my visa, he added bitterly, slamming the papers onto the table in front of me. I leaned back slightly in my chair, taking in the scene. Charlotte and I have been together for over 10 years, I said, half-jokingly. She pleaded with me for another chance. I promised to forgive her if she'd just leave with me. Matthew's face twisted in rage as he slammed his fist onto the table. That's not possible, he yelled, his voice cracking with anger. I've helped her so much. She told me she loved me. There was a raw, almost desperate anguish in his words, but it was overshadowed by the fury in his eyes. I met his gaze coolly, my mind racing with the memories of what had happened, the betrayal, the public humiliation. But I kept my face impassive. It was Valentine's Day when Matthew had stolen Charlotte from me, when he'd kissed her in front of me, letting me watch it, letting me feel every ounce of the pain. Then he had the nerve to send me a message afterward, telling me they were together, almost daring me to give up on her. But I wasn't giving up. Not now. Not after everything we'd been through. Matthew, in his rage, had no idea how deeply rooted my place was in Charlotte's heart. His manipulations had crumbled under the weight of history. I could see it in the way his face twisted, how he still thought he had a chance. I wasn't about to let him believe in that false hope any longer. Before he could react, he lunged at me, his anger fueling the move. But he was nothing compared to me, a small man trying to throw himself at something much bigger. I slapped him with enough force to send him tumbling to the ground. My coffee spilled across his head as I swiftly blocked him, my hand firmly pushing him away. I knelt down, grabbed a fistful of his hair, and forced him to look up at me, his face twisted in disbelief and anger. I smiled, not out of joy, but out of bitter satisfaction. Don't you really believe Charlotte loves you? I mocked, my voice low. I'm sorry for you. Did you really think she loved you? The anger on his face was almost enough to make me sick, but I suppressed it, trying to focus on the words I needed to say. I will forgive Charlotte, I said, my voice calm but firm, and we will start over if she chooses to come with me. But I will never be able to forgive her if she doesn't. I could see it hit him then, the realization that all his efforts had been for nothing. His expression faltered, something resembling understanding creeping in, even if he hated it. The next day, at the airport, Charlotte nervously checked her phone, her lips pressed tight, anxiety clear on her face. I watched her for a moment before she looked up, her eyes clouded with worry. Nathan, she said, her voice tight. Matthew's been in a serious car accident. It's really bad. Do you think we could postpone the trip? Her words hung in the air, heavy with uncertainty. The moment of escape I had been hoping for seemed to slip through my fingers. I remained silent for a moment, observing Charlotte closely as her expression shifted with the weight of my words. I understand why you didn't accompany me to that concert, I said quietly. Charlotte froze, her lips trembling as she tried, unsuccessfully, to muster a smile. It was Matthew's birthday that night, she explained, her voice strained. I was invited. I couldn't refuse him. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Charlotte, I began, my tone steady but laden with frustration. It was my favorite band, one I've loved since I was a teenager. I told you that. You kept asking me what I wanted for my birthday, and I told you, I just wanted enough money to see them live. I paused for a moment, watching her carefully. You became upset and questioned why I hadn't invited you. But, Charlotte, you know what I told you, that seeing that concert with you was my 18th birthday wish. Don't you remember? I shook my head slightly before continuing. Yet, I went alone, not knowing that my wife was somewhere in that crowd, kissing someone else. I tried to reach you during the concert, sent you texts, reminding you to eat, but you never replied, no explanation, nothing. Charlotte's voice broke through the silence, rising in a mixture of fear and desperation. There will be other opportunities, she said softly, her attempt at reassurance falling flat. I held her gaze, my expression unchanging. The weight of her actions was undeniable. I interrupted her before she could continue, my voice sharp and resolute. "There won't be another one," I said, my gaze unwavering. "That was their farewell concert. It won't happen again." I repeated, emphasizing the finality of my words. The silence stretched between us as I held her eyes, letting the weight of the truth sink in. After a brief pause, I suddenly relaxed, the tension in my shoulders easing as I waved my hand dismissively. "Proceed," I said flatly, almost casually. "You are his supervisor, and he was involved in an accident. If you don't go, it would look terrible." I glanced at her, my grin now tinged with a sense of control, even though my emotions were swirling beneath the surface. "About the islands," I added with a mock lightness, though the bitterness was still there. I met her gaze one last time, recalling the 18-year-old girl who had once demanded that we visit those islands, her face filled with expectation. "We'll just go next time," I said, as if I were granting her some sort of reprieve. Charlotte didn't say anything else. She hurried away, her figure swallowed by the rain and snow as she dashed toward Matthew's side. Her steps quickened, as if she were running from something, perhaps from the consequences of her actions, or perhaps from the guilt that she couldn't fully admit yet. Once she was gone, I stood there for a moment, my breath coming out in slow, controlled exhalations. In my hand, I held the torn-up airline ticket, the fragments of paper fluttering in the air before I discarded them into the trash. I walked over to my desk and printed a new ticket, this time, for a flight to Argentina. As I prepared to leave, I imagined Charlotte in another man's arms, her face soft with sleep. But when she woke, her reality would shift, and the gentle kiss she felt on her forehead wouldn't feel right. Her eyes would widen as she realized that the comfort she sought had come at a price, one that she wasn't prepared to pay. And I knew, deep down, that whatever happened next, I was done. There would be no more chances. I interrupted her before she could continue, my voice sharp and resolute. "There won't be another one," I said, my gaze unwavering. "That was their farewell concert. It won't happen again." I repeated, emphasizing the finality of my words. The silence stretched between us as I held her eyes, letting the weight of the truth sink in. After a brief pause, I suddenly relaxed, the tension in my shoulders easing as I waved my hand dismissively. "Proceed," I said flatly, almost casually. "You are his supervisor, and he was involved in an accident. If you don't go, it would look terrible." I glanced at her, my grin now tinged with a sense of control, even though my emotions were swirling beneath the surface. "About the islands," I added with a mock lightness, though the bitterness was still there. I met her gaze one last time, recalling the 18-year-old girl who had once demanded that we visit those islands, her face filled with expectation. "We'll just go next time," I said, as if I were granting her some sort of reprieve. Charlotte didn't say anything else. She hurried away, her figure swallowed by the rain and snow as she dashed toward Matthew's side. Her steps quickened, as if she were running from something, perhaps from the consequences of her actions, or perhaps from the guilt that she couldn't fully admit yet. Once she was gone, I stood there for a moment, my breath coming out in slow, controlled exhalations. In my hand, I held the torn-up airline ticket, the fragments of paper fluttering in the air before I discarded them into the trash. I walked over to my desk and printed a new ticket, this time, for a flight to Argentina. As I prepared to leave, I imagined Charlotte in another man's arms, her face soft with sleep. But when she woke, her reality would shift, and the gentle kiss she felt on her forehead wouldn't feel right. Her eyes would widen as she realized that the comfort she sought had come at a price, one that she wasn't prepared to pay. And I knew, deep down, that whatever happened next, I was done. There would be no more chances. When did you decide to break up? Then you understood that every day of the future will feel like suffocation. I made the decision to spend some time traveling around Argentina after completing my business. It was summertime in the country, 22,000 kilometers from home, and the sun was shining on everything with a golden shine. The air in Buenos Aires was a blend of Latin passion and European beauty. As tango dancers spun through the streets, I had been invited by a business colleague de Mendoza, where the vineyard stretched out like a verdant sea of vines beneath the July heat. Charlotte called as I was sipping Malbec wine. "Where are you, Nathan?" she said, in a scratchy voice on the other side of the world. I said, after pausing to take a sip of wine, "What are you looking for? Please deliver the divorce documents to my office. If you have signed them, don't bother phoning." If not, she was silent and I was about to end the call when she abruptly apologized. "A child lost in a busy store." Her sobs reached me full of pain and hopelessness. "I'm sorry, Nathan, please pardon me. I'll do anything you ask me to do. 20 years, we've spent more than 2 decades together. Are you able to let it go? How could you be so callous?" My grin must have reached her ears because she stopped crying. "Why are you laughing?" she asked Nathan in a panic. You're always like this, I said, exhaling and gazing down. Never doubting my love for you. I'm confident that I'll feel sad for you if you show me you're suffering, but have you ever considered the possibility that I no longer love you, Charlotte? It was New Year's Eve. The next time I visited my hometown. Childhood sweethearts have the issue of knowing one another too. Well, there was a knock on the door as my family was getting together for the reunion supper. Charlotte was standing there when I opened it, looking unkempt, thinner than before with a distressed face and unkempt hair. She appeared powerless and defeated her, and Matthew's reputations in their social circles had been destroyed by the PowerPoint that I had made. Justice seemed to be served. People who had previously stood by Charlotte started to turn away from her once she fell into a downward spiral at supper. I heard some of the talk regarding myself. I hadn't spoken to her since our previous phone call. Fireworks illuminated the sky in the distance and the warm glow of houses filled the streets. Charlotte gave me a dejected look. Yet there was still a light of hope in her eyes. She stumbled over her words as she spoke. We've been spending New Year's Eve together every year. I adore you, Nathan. Without you, I truly could not survive. I looked at her and all of a sudden I was reminded of the younger version of myself. Her cheeks flushed as she sneaked out on New Year's Eve to present me a bracelet made of crimson strain that she had braided herself. I expected to feel pain when I saw her again, but I felt nothing. The previous few months have filled me in unexpected ways. As a result of my global travels and new experiences, the long, chilly winter was finally over. As the year came to a conclusion with the sound of fireworks, it was the start of a new year. Don't do this, Charlotte, I replied. Glancing at her. New Year's is upon us. It sickens me to see you like way. Her face became pale and I closed the door without saying anything more. I simply shook my head when my parents inquired who it was. Nobody. Then amid the laughing and joyous atmosphere of the family meal, I found myself battling for the final piece of meat in the hot pot. It was flawless. My family was still with me. My career took off under my supervisor's alleged leadership prowess. I sent postcards from every new location I visited, rapidly adjusting to a life of continual travel. After learning some online lingo, my mother now referred to me as her travel frog. This time I was in Japan eating some mango bread as I made my way to a fireworks event, always frightened. My mother contacted me and warned me to be careful. Son, I've heard that earthquakes occur frequently in Japan. I reassured her with a smile. There aren't many earthquakes, but as fate would have it, the Nankai Trough was the subject of an extraordinary earthquake warning from Japan's meteorological office. I was unavailable for a time because all of the flights back home were booked. In a desperate attempt to protect me, my mother began praying and even burning incense at midnight. Charlotte meantime purchased a ticket to Japan after learning of the news. Even though he had been blacklisted and lost his job, Matthew was still with her at the time. They were unable to leave the unhealthy relationship they were in. Don't be dumb, Matthew pleaded. Nathan won't forgive you even if you leave. Do you not understand? Charlotte, however, paid no attention. She snatched up a kettle during their battle and smashed it over Matthew's head. He doesn't love you. He yelled, blood streaming from his forehead. Do you not understand? The only person who loves you is me. Charlotte left him behind and left without saying a word. In spite of a delayed flight, I eventually returned to my homeland. The attendants advised me to turn off my faulty phone when it received a call from an unknown number just before takeoff. I did, and I forgot about the call. I reassured my family when I arrived home and promptly resumed my work. Until Matthew showed up outside my office building, that is red-eyed and unkempt. He was no longer the self-assured man he had been. Charlotte, where are you? Give me my Charlotte back, he insisted, gazing at him through the glass door. I scowled and pondered how he had gotten into such a mess. It all made sense now that Charlotte had traveled to Japan before to the disaster. Despite remembering the odd call from earlier, I remained composed and had Matthew taken out by security. I don't care. I told him she is now your girlfriend rather than mine. My family was eventually told the dreadful news by Charlotte's dad. Charlotte had located the inn where I was staying, but she was only able to get a busy signal when she attempted to contact me. She thought I deliberately ignored her. The structure collapsed as a result of her pursuing me with a heavy heart. My mother broke the news to me. The catastrophe had claimed Charlotte's life. Her legs were broken, and she had been crushed. It seemed doubtful if she would ever walk again. Are you going to visit her son? My mother inquired carefully. No, I said, shaking my head. Charlotte and I no longer interact with one another. I hung up the phone and peered out the window of a new nation. What splendor this place held for me. I was eager to see it. What about the past? The events of today are born again, while the events of yesterday die with yesterday. I wish that everyone would have the guts to turn around and begin anew. Please leave your opinions in the space provided below and remember to like, share, and subscribe. Dear listeners. In a world built on lies and shattered trust, Nathan discovers the true depth of betrayal, not from the affair itself, but from the truth that was hidden right before his eyes. As his life unravels in the wake of Charlotte's choices, can he find the strength to forgive, or will revenge be his only solace?